Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Matt Fryer Golf Podcast. A different episode for you this week after what we saw people commenting last week about how helpful they found the instructional type of pod that we did last week. We've got an interview this week now, which we're going to delve into the technology side of golf and how that can help you. It's with Spencer Reynolds from Fujikura Golf, and we're going to get to him very shortly. But as you'll notice, if you are watching this, Tom isn't with us, and that is because we are down in Surrey this week. We're actually at the Windlesham Golf Club. They've been very kind at letting us use one of their nice suites that they have for hosting conferences and weddings and such. And we're going to be doing the podcast in here today. We are also out on their golf course later doing some other bits and bobs. But like I say, we're down here in Surrey. The BMW PGA Championship is going on round the corner at Wentworth. We're not actually going to there, but because it is going on, we have a lot of industry folk around the area at the moment, and we've been able to do a few fun little videos and a few in the reds and things like that. So it's been quite a fun little trip thus far. We've managed to shoot a video with Mizuno that will be coming out very soon, I think, probably first week of October. I think that'll be coming, a bit of an announcement in there, and a few things changing for us moving forwards. And then we've actually been down to an absolute banger of a golf course today. We've been down to Sunningdale Heath, which is a 18-hole golf course. It's a shorter golf course. It's only 3,500 yards. But don't let that fool you. It's a par 58. But it was tricky. We've got an in the red coming from there, which is going to be really, really good. There's some real ups and downs through it, and it was an absolute joy to play. It was a course that was designed by Harry Colt. It was originally a ladies' golf club, but then it was taken over a few years ago, and it sort of lost the moniker of a ladies' club, and is now just run as a club for everybody. Like I say, shorter golf club, but it's a course that I think you could have so much fun around, whether you're learning to play, whether you're a good player, whether you're a mid-handicapper. There was just a real different selection of holes. No par 5s, only par 3s and par 4s, the longest par 4 being 296 yards. But the tricked up, the greens are small. They were immaculate green surfaces with a little bit of speed and a little bit of undulation to them, which made it a really interesting golf course, and like I say, one that was really fun. And Harry Colt, who was the designer, had the ethos that every town in Britain, England, should have one of these golf courses that the locals could learn to play golf on, and they could get into the game there, and then they would graduate to, bigger golf courses. One of the best golf courses in England is just next door to Sunningdale Heath, being Sunningdale Old and New Golf Course, and obviously they're on the same piece of land. And it was fantastic. It was really good, and I do think if we had more golf courses like this, or like Sunningdale Heath, we would see, participation go up. They even have a little 4-hole stretch that they close just for junior coaching and getting the juniors out there, which I think is fantastic and a great way for, the kids to get into the game and spend a little bit of time out there. So yeah, really, really fun couple of days we've had down here in Surrey. It's a part of the world that I've not played loads of golf in, but there's definitely a few courses I want to come back to and tick off down here. Sunningdale Old and New being those. Wentworth, you've got your Fox Hills, you've got the Wisleys, you've got Queenwoods. There's just a real treasure trove of golf courses down here. But enough of my ramblings about what's going on down here. We're going to head over to an interview with Spencer Reynolds now. We've got also Overrated, Underrated coming at the end of the podcast, and we've also got a couple of questions that you guys have fired into us on our socials. If you haven't already, do make sure you are following us on all the platforms, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, and if you do have any questions, if you're not on social media, info@mattfryergolf.co.uk, and you can send us overrated, underrated on there, questions, anything that you want, fire them over, just entitle it something Matt Fryer Golf Pod, and we will get to those and answer those in the shows that are forthcoming. But without further ado, we're going to get Spencer in here, and we're going to talk about technology, golf shafts in particular, and how they can help your game, and maybe some misconceptions that are out there probably that we've been hanging on to for maybe the past 10, 15 years. So let's get him in. Let's talk some tech. So welcome to the podcast, Mr. Spencer Reynolds. Thank you for coming on.
Maddie. It's good to be here.
It's an honour. And for the people that don't know, that are listening and watching, just tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is you do at Fujikura.
Sure, yeah. So at Fujikura, I'm our product and brand manager. We have a small team in our Carlsbad office, about 25 people, and that includes all of shipping, all of marketing, all of sales, all of everything. So it's 25 people. So we run a small operation. So whatever anyone's title is, I promise you they do that plus 6 or 7 other things. But my main area of focus is product, right? And that's kind of what we're here to talk about today, hopefully.
Yeah.
Before Fujikura, I've been in the golf business quite some time. It's about 2007. I worked for an OEM for close to 10 years, and then kind of found my way to the component side, and now I'm here talking to you. So
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's
Love
all
it.
good
And it's we visited, was it last October we came?
yeah.
It's a cool, quirky little office, isn't it? Like, I expected something so different when we went there. I think we've got a video coming out on Fujikura's YouTube channel, actually, of our tour around of the office. And like, there's the warehouse in the back where you're making and testing stuff as well, which is a really cool space for all like the golf nerds out there. You can really get deep into it. But yeah, it was good. Like the team behind Fujikura. Obviously, you've got a bigger warehouse and a bigger plant out in Japan, haven't you?
Yeah, so we do this. That is the U.S. office, so we do have kind of our parent company that is in Japan. But yeah, that office is small. It holds all of our physical offices as well as a testing and hitting bay with our motion capture system, an R&D facility, and a full shipping warehouse.
Yeah,
so we got a lot out of a little space.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And like, I think the way you can react as well, you know, the way you test things, you're constantly evolving, and you sort of like to go through the process. And like I say, this video, if you are watching it on YouTube, go and check out the video, because there was a lot of stuff in there. I naively sort of, and you could probably see it when you took us around, you did the tour, sort of naively was unaware of how graphite shafts were made. Sort of thought it was just, roll them and that'll do. Like that, is it round or is it square? Yeah. And it was quite an interesting process. Yeah, it was really, really fascinating. So we're going to talk a few things today. Obviously, we're trying to help the listeners out, maybe debunk a few misconceptions, also talk Fujikura, obviously one of the most popular shaft amongst the pros, the most winningest, to use a word there, on tour. But the big thing that we always hear, especially obviously we're brand partners with you on the main channel, and when we've done videos about graphite irons, the number one thing, and I think it's more aimed at the Axiom shafts and graphite iron shafts, with me being a little bit younger and a slightly better than average player. It's, why have you got graphite shafts there for old people? Right.
And you bring up a good point. And if we talk about kind of the history of graphite throughout the bag, there was a time when there were no graphite driver shafts either. It's funny that, we've become so accustomed to only seeing graphite now, but there was a time where those were steel, and that phased out to graphite, and that trickled down into metal woods. Fairway woods were steel, and then they switched over to graphite. And then hybrids, right?
That was only like, 10, 15 years?
Yeah,
well, 10 years ago, we really seen them sort of, the steel disappear.
It's a slow-moving ship, and then you see the fairway woods go, and then the hybrids go. So kind of the irons are the last piece of the puzzle to make that switch. The benefit to anything we design in graphite, and the reason it took off in the woods to start, is that graphite is not an isotropic material like steel, so you have a lot of freedom in design. Now, that means you can make things that are lighter in weight that are equally as stiff. And you start to get some freedom when you're talking about a 45-inch long golf club. You get to have some flexibility and not being, overly heavy while still maintaining consistency and accuracy. And that's no different than irons, right? So the biggest benefit for us in irons is we can make something that's more stout or stiff for a better player like yourself that is not overly heavy. We can make them up to 125, 130 grams. We can also create that same sort of stiffness in 105, 110, 95 grams. And it's because of that material we have the ability to stretch the relationship between weight and flex and almost isolate them a little bit. So in the Axiom line, that's really more of a technology story where VeloCore technology, that prominent in our Ventus line of product, was carried over into a new category. So that is not only the idea of using graphite, as a base, but you're actually talking about an advanced graphite design on top of that. So it's really just the evolution of materials and processes that make a graphite iron shaft that was once thought of as, well, it's, only if you're really low swing speed and you need something that creates excess launch and excess spin and maybe is a little bit easier to work the ball right to left. Now you're talking about graphite that is every bit as stiff or stiffer, lower in torque than steel, and feels good. And so we're starting to pair those things together. So to your point, it's just going to take time, but we feel that that's, the evolution of graphite throughout the bag.
Yeah, and it we did a video on this, I think, last year. When you think back to when golf started, there were wooden shafts,
right?
And steel was banned, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There was it the RNA and the USGA banned it, and then they allowed it at one point, and you think, well, there was that ship that had to sail,
Yeah,
and
go from hickory to steel and from steel to graphite.
Yeah,
work our way through.
And I think, like you say there, you mentioned something a minute ago, velo core, which we'll get into in a second, but with a steel, you can't make many manipulations, really.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, yes, there's some things you can do with steel. Absolutely, you can change step patterns and you can change wall thicknesses and things like that. But inherently, as you try to make a product stiffer, it tends to get heavier. And graphite is just not quite as constrained in that department. There's just a lot more flexibility in design. And specifically when you're talking about a graphite product, I mean, when we work with different plies of material and tip flags and all these orientations of material, the layout and the design of those materials is even more intricate now than it's been in the past. So that means we can address very specific things like, well, let's just make the tip flex X, or the mid flex a lot stiffer, or the handle a lot stiffer, or in this profile we want to change that, and make the handle softer and the mid section stiffer. We can do a lot of things with performance characteristics with graphite that make a lot of sense in an iron when you think about it.
Yeah, you've probably got more scope to tailor it, haven't
Correct.
you? Like if, say for myself, I probably don't want it as heavy, but I still want the stiffness.
Yeah.
But I don't want it to feel like an iron bar as you're swinging it, and you could, we'll alter butt, we'll alter mid.
Yeah, and you see that a lot, honestly. Just like there is the stigma of graphite is, for older players or slower players or whatever it is, there's also an association with players between weight and flex. And what that feels like. So one of the things we saw when we tested Axiom iron shaft specifically was we make a 125 gram configuration in an X-Flex, and a lot of players that played that in steel said, okay, I'm going to come in and test your product, 125, I can finally play graphite because it's the right weight.
Yeah.
And they would hit that side by side with the 105X, and they'd leave with the 105.
Yeah, I've
and
changed to
the conclusion
those.
was basically like, I didn't realize I could have the same consistency and the same feel of flex without feeling like I'm swinging something overly heavy.
Yeah.
And when you start to do those player interviews, you start to really dig into what players like and don't like. And we did a tremendous amount of market research on iron shafts, steel, graphite, whatever it is. And a lot of better players would even tell you, if I have a long weekend of, let's say I play golf a couple days in a row and I'm hitting a lot of balls, quite frankly, I'm tired. I'm pretty gassed by the end of the round from swinging a 130 gram shaft the majority of my shots.
Yeah.
And after playing a few rounds with something lighter, I'm not giving anything up in distance or dispersion. I'm actually getting better spin rates and launch conditions, and I don't feel as labored at the end of the round. So there's a lot of advantages to graphite, but the overbearing one is really just the ability to manipulate and fine-tune performance is huge.
Yeah. And do you think we'll start to see it take off on tour more? Do you think that's a stage we have to get by? I think there's one barrier at the moment.
I think tour is kind of the last hurdle. In this particular sort of category, you'll see consumer adoption before you'll see tour adoption.
Interesting. I thought it'd be the other way around. The tour would lead
generally
what the consumer does.
Generally it is. So we look at like wood shafts, like driver shafts, right? That the tour kind of tends to dominate that conversation, and that trickles down to the consumer market. When we sort of talk about Axiom products or high-end graphite irons, it's almost the inverse of that. It's kind of like a bit of a grassroots effect where you get a lot of interest and popularity. And Axiom for us is not necessarily a tour-driven product. And by that I mean it's not a product that doesn't perform at a tour standard. It's just, not really a huge tour driver for us.
Yeah.
And the irony is we've had tour players that hear about it and reach out to us and say, well, how come you didn't show this to me? Why can't I try it? And
Oh,
it's
right,
just,
okay.
Yeah, and it's just so the interest is there.
Yeah.
And it's definitely something in our wheelhouse in our conversation. But we wanted to start with this premium product and bring it to market. We don't even have a huge SKU count to start, right? We only have 3 weight categories.
Will there be more?
Yeah, we're working on expanding that. And
Yeah.
we wanted to start out and say, well, here's kind of a lightweight traditional graphite, a midweight, and a heavyweight.
Yeah.
And let's see where it falls and let's see what the requests come from. And that, has kind of given us some clues as to what we should add and what we should expand.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realise that tall players would reach out. But I
Yeah.
think, like I said, I think there's one barrier. Potentially like the tour fitters, work for the companies because it's like that. I sometimes see them, they're the sort of gatekeepers, aren't they?
Yeah.
And they could maybe manipulate what some. I know that obviously the tour player will have the final say and say,
Sure.
I want this, but you could be led down a path potentially
Sure.
of this is that, and if we've worked with Dynamic Gold project, whatever it may be in the steel side of things. We know that works.
Right.
Let's not touch it.
Yeah, and a lot of those players have been playing the same kind of configurations of irons
Yeah.
since their late teens.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's a big change. And you're talking about changing more than just one club. If you change a driver shaft or a fairway wood shaft, you're talking about really changing the feel of your whole bag.
Yeah.
And one of the on the development side with Axiom, one of the interesting challenges was when you're talking about building a driver shaft, it's one of the few clubs in the bag where you're going almost 100% pretty much all the time, unless there's times
Yeah.
you need to, saw that shot off or try to shape a shot specifically. It's kind of meant to go full gas, and irons have to be able to do both.
Yeah.
Right? You have to be able to hit a full shot without having ballooning and excess spin, and then you have to have something that if you hit a half shot or a partial shot, doesn't fall out of the sky. So from a design perspective, when you look at Axiom irons, you're trying to achieve much more specific metrics on a broader scale in more golf clubs than you are with a driver shaft. So it takes a little extra time on the development side to get that right.
How long would that take from sort of start to finish? You come up with the right day one, guys. We want to build a graphite iron shaft that's going to be not only for the older, slower swinger.
Yeah.
We're going to build something that is going to be for the better player.
Yeah.
The player who's wanting to improve,
Right.
the guy who's
Right.
swinging it faster, or the girl who's swinging it faster. How long is that taking from day one to putting it out in market?
So if you rewind the clock back to original Ventus, you're talking about a product, the first blue profile came to market late to the tour in late 2018. Retail
Is that
early
when it was?
2019. Yeah, that's how long Ventus has kind of been around. And it's thankfully for us has become more of a household name. No one seems to really remember a time when it wasn't there.
Yeah.
But that's how long it's been there. So one of the key elements to that success is what we talk about VeloCore technology. And when we saw that be successful, then we transitioned it into a hybrid profile. It was always in the conversation of, well, how far can we push this? So that initial conversation may have started relatively quickly, but it took 2 to 3 years to bring that to fruition. Because if we're going to put that technology on a product, players have associated that technology with certain performance characteristics in a good way, and that's more centeredness of contact, better consistency, consistent launch and spin numbers, more speed. All those things had to be available in an iron as well, or we couldn't very well put a key technology in it unless they did those things.
Yeah.
So when you look at that and you say, well, we know what this tech can do, how can we tailor it, reconfigure it, make it work throughout the bag? That takes a lot of time, a lot of testing, and quite a few iterations to get right. And then when you get something that's right, you work on that player testing side and you see these players hit it, and you look at the data, and you run 20, 30 players through a test, and you go through the data and you go, all right, we got something, because it's doing all the things we want it to do with none of the negative effects. And that is an exciting moment.
Yeah.
That is what gets us very excited, because you can design a wonderful shaft on paper, but part of what makes Fujikura product great is that it feels really good.
Yeah.
Right? And feel is this intangible thing that's different for every player.
Yeah, I think if it's not right, if it
Yeah.
doesn't feel good in the hands and it feels wildly different off the face, it's like, nope, get it away, get it
Right.
out of my hands.
Right. So if we can create a product that tests very well and on paper, and then give it to a player and they go, oh yeah, I'll take this with me today. Then we know, okay,
Yeah,
we're
we've
on
got
the right
something.
track. We got something.
And what's
to do.
that, about 3 years, you reckon?
Yeah, I'd say the Axiom project took around that amount of time to go all the way from ideation to completion, and it was a labor of love in a good way. I mean, it was And it was a new venture for us. We had not done on the Fujikura America side, we had not offered a premium iron shaft before. We had done graphite iron shafts with our Pro and Vista Pro, which are very good products, but we hadn't really dipped our toe in that. Well, if we're going to kind of push technology and price point, like, can we do this? And the answer was yes, which was cool.
Nice. That's about 3 years. How long do you think it would take now for the tide to turn on seeing graphite shafts in like the better players' bag?
It's getting there already.
Yeah,
it's getting there already. We start to. I think what's interesting about it is the power of the recognition of that technology and kind of the Fujikura branding really helped elevate that product's attention very, very quickly. I think if we had rolled this product out at a different time, maybe the product would be as good, but I'm not sure you get the initial sort of reception and curiosity. But as soon as players saw that have been used to seeing Ventus and been used to hearing about VeloCore technology and say, hey, we did this in a product through the whole bag, it piqued curiosity pretty quickly. And most of that curiosity came from the better end player. And that's where we see that adoption rate. I talked to you about 125 versus 105. There was a lot of better players that were like, I've heard about the benefits of graphite. I've always wanted to try it. You've never had a weight category that seemed right for me. 125, I'm ready to try, and they walk away with 105. Now, we have plenty of players that fit into 125 as well.
Yeah.
When we talk about shaft development and fitting, we would say that a shaft is sort of the timing device of the golf swing.
Yeah.
So we're going to use bend profiles to match with your swing style. We're going to use weight to match up with your tempo, and then flex to match up with your speed. And when you can kind of marry all those things together, it's a pretty powerful combination for the player, and results are really good.
Yeah.
So it's been fun. And to answer your question, I think the transition to the better players bag it's happening now.
Yeah.
And it'll just take some time.
3-4 years, and we start to see it more and more.
It'll take some time. Like I said, this started with drivers, and this is kind of the last piece of the puzzle to go. And so it makes logical sense. It's just going to take time and trial, really.
Yeah.
And that's fine. We're in it for the long haul, so we'll
We'll
be
keeps you in a
patient.
job, doesn't it?
Yeah, we'll be patient.
That's a good thing. Talking about the better player then, obviously looking from the outside in, and I hear it amongst my friends, even I had one of them come up to me the other day. My dad's just got the shaft, and he was asking, one of his lessons came to me and said, what's that Ventus shaft? That one that Scotty uses and that your dad's got. I thought, well, that's a little bit harsh to compare Scotty to my dad. But what is it? Why is it so good? What's going on? And looking at a few key stats, over 50% win rate on tour last year.
Yep.
You got Rory, you've got Scotty Scheffler, you've got Nelly Cordy, you've got Roseanne playing it. You've got, I think it was 4,000 shafts in play over the tour last year.
Yeah.
Why? Why? Because I firstly, that 2018, I didn't realise it was in there for that long.
Yep.
I thought it was sort of a 21, 22 sort of. Was that when TR maybe came out?
Yeah, and that was kind of second generation of Ventus, an altered, more specific sort of design version of Ventus that still lived together with the originals.
Yeah.
Just some different tech and a little bit lower launch and spin and stiffer profiles. But but original, the OG, as we like to call it, has been around for that long. It's kind of crazy to think about.
So why do you think so many are playing it and starting to trust it?
I think it's a very good combination of things. One, it all starts with the product, right? So the product has to perform. Anytime you release a new product, you could see an uptick in interest, for a few months.
Yeah.
Just because it's a new product. But I think the reason that I point out how long Ventus has been around is if the technology didn't work, the longevity of popularity wouldn't be there. So that's part one, is the product. But part two is we have an incredible tour team. And it's just like the rest of us, it's very small. It's 3 individuals, and they're all very, very good at what they do. And we approach sort of tour seating in more a relationship-based way. When we come out with a new product, we won't march up and down the range. For example, we just came out with our new updated kind of improved Ventus line to replace the original. We're not going to go to every player that plays the original Ventus and like, all right, old one's out, new one's in, go.
Yeah, like you would see maybe with a driver head or something like that.
Yeah, so we work a little more methodically and a little more relationship-based, where we have great relationships with the OEMs, and what we'll do is present the product to them, and a few key players as well. We have relationships with them as well, but we kind of work through the OEMs and say, this is our new version. This is what it does. Put it in the drawer. Let me know if you have any questions. And what we start to see is the adoption rate just grows and snowballs over time. And because we take that approach, there's a lot more longevity. So when we see a Fujikura shaft go in a bag, it tends to stay for a long period of time. So just like I told you, that wouldn't happen at that professional level. We don't pay any players to use our products.
Yeah.
That wouldn't happen at the professional level like it does unless
unless
it didn't do what we said it would do. Nice.
And would it be almost an issue? Like, maybe it's probably a good problem to have, but say you score your Scotties and your Rorys, your Nellies and whoever it may be. When 2 years down, let's say Ventus 2.0 TR comes out and Scotty's still got one because he just loves it that much, and you're going, can you maybe
give it a shot?
Can you give it a go? And they go, no, this is perfect.
Yeah. What's funny is there are a handful of players that is very hard to get them to switch, which is it's like a nice compliment, but at the same time, we're like, I promise you, we've done better in the last 10 years. Yeah. We've improved, I promise. I hear that from players like, if you could just make me a shaft as good as XYZ, it's like, yeah, that was 18 years ago. I hope we've done better since then. If you're telling me,
the ball has moved a little bit.
I hope we've done better. But yeah, that's part of it as well. Is just when you make high performance product that's adopted. Not every tour professional likes change.
No.
A lot of them like to stick with what works. And, in some ways, tour players are no different than consumers. And when you are a tour pro and you look up and down the range and you say, why is everybody playing a Ventus except for me? What am I missing out? What am I missing out on? And we see some of that in adoption rate is like that sometimes translates to why players want to try.
Yeah.
And with, 6 profiles now, technically 9 if you incorporate the original, but I'll say 6 because the new one's an uptick of the original.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of options too. So we got a very good array of product to finely tune a player.
Yeah.
And so, we feel good about our chances that we're not. It's like if we made apparel, we don't just make one shirt, it's blue and it's size large. We try to make different styles and sizes to complement more golfers.
I think that's where sort of the consumer then comes in, because I think what you've done well is sort of color grade it almost, or color category. So not that, to say that you are pigeonholed in a certain one, like you've got black, you've got blue, and you've got red.
Right.
I play the red myself. I dabble in and out of the blue. I've got the blue in my fairway stuff. But then you see sort of the blacks generally in the harder hitter. And I think that's where maybe the consumer sort of approach comes in, because some of them are going, well, can I use that shaft firstly?
Yeah.
Because it's, I see the pros using it.
Right.
Am I good enough?
Right.
But then it's easy to sort of navigate down the road towards the right one. And was that sort of the idea when they were made?
It is, yeah. So the color coding is really just to simplify things for the consumer and the fitter and everybody else. We did it before at our Atmos Tour spec line, and we started to, it's a little difficult to embed that at first. And now we see that that's pretty recognizable amongst players. I know what a red would do. I know what a blue would do, and that takes some time to get that perception correct. But even if we talk about Ventus as a family, we would say that the red profile is the higher launching, higher spinning of the bunch.
Yeah.
It's not a high launch, high spin shaft. You're a player with ball speed. You play red very comfortably in a driver. So it is the highest launching, highest spinning relative to the others.
That's the family.
That's really one misconception. We'll see players say, well, I need launch and spin. I should play red, right? Well, yes, potentially, but we also see players sometimes like that fit more into a blue profile or something a little bit more neutral. So for us, these shafts are laid out not only just to create launch and spin characteristics, but the bend profiles are kind of unique in themselves. I mean, just to say they're stiffer or softer in certain sections compared to each other. And that's where I told you earlier, we're trying to sync up a bend profile of a shaft with the swing type of the player.
Yeah.
And so you may need launch and spin, but if your swing style doesn't really match up with the bend profile of a red, and it matches better with a different profile, you could actually see improved launch and spin numbers out of
the other ones, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So that's why we're so fitting focused.
Yeah.
Is we use terms like launch and spin to help guide the consumer and the fitter in that direction as an overview of this is what it's designed to do. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's the same for every single player. So that's why we're so focused on custom fit.
Yeah, that was my next question. What, for the average golfer that's out there, I think they're becoming more attuned to like custom fitting. I think in the past it was like, oh, I'm not going to go for one. I think everyone's starting to get on board with you need to go for one because everyone's swinging it different. We all look at it different. We're all got different body shapes, sizes. When someone's going for a fitting, whether it is graphite irons, whether it's a graphite driver shaft, what are maybe 3 key things that they should be looking out for from that fit, or is there sort of some key questions that they should ask?
Yeah, when we fit players and it's more shaft focused fitting, we're going to do some homework and ask some questions, just like any fitter would. It's what are you using this golf club for? Especially if you're talking about fairway woods. Is this a tee club? Is this a fairway and a tee club? Is this just a strictly it's okay if it launches low and runs out. It's just I'm trying to get the ball down the fairway. I'm not worrying about landing on the green in 2. I'm just trying to get forward progression.
Yeah.
So there's always an interview process. But from a fitting perspective with shafts, what we look at is essentially how the player swings the club and how they load the golf club. So when we talk about loading the golf club, that's that transitional moment between the top of the backswing as you transition into the downswing. What we find most of the time is that players that have a smoother or more deliberate transition, not necessarily slow, but just a smoother or more deliberate transition in that section, a softer handle section of the shaft tends to pair well.
Yeah.
And what we see with players that have a more aggressive or rapid transition, sometimes a shorter backswing and a really quick move down into the ball, that they like to feel a little bit more stability in the handle section. So it's as they're loading that shaft, it's where they're feeling kind of that force, flex, and pull. Will kind of guide them. Now, when you look at like a Ventus Blue, that's how it's designed. It's softer in the handle section, and so it's easier to load, and then it gets progressively stiffer through the midsection. So now it feels stable on the way down. And it's very, very stiff in the tip section to create the face angle to be more square at impact. Ventus Red is kind of the inverse of that. It's stiff in the handle. It gets softer as it goes down. So the question we get sometimes about Ventus Red is, why would you make a stiffer handle product for a shaft that's supposed to be higher launch and higher spin? Well, we do need stability somewhere in the shaft, right?
Yeah.
So if we can stabilize that transition point, a player will actually feel more of that kick and flex into the ball, which tends to add dynamic loft, and that's where you see increased launch and spin. And then Ventus Black is very, very stiff throughout, right? Very stiff handle, very stiff midsection, very stiff tip section. And that's for a player that is moving it with speed from transition all the way through impact. It needs kind of stability check marks across the board. So that's a big one for us, is we can identify
through the interview.
In the interview, in the swing styles, we'll watch you hit a couple balls, see how you move the golf club. And then what we would do after that, we kind of get a guideline of not just bend profile, but we can see your initial numbers and see, okay, maybe we need some launch, we need some spin. And then we start to move into weight, right? Well, what's the appropriate weight for your swing tempo?
Yeah.
If we can give you something lighter, can you move it faster and still be consistent? If we give you something heavier, is it keep you more imbalanced and more on plane? And then lastly, we can match that speed with flex.
Yeah.
Right? So we can start to understand,
Flex.
R, S, and X, right? And flex is kind of an odd one because not all X flexes are the same. Not all S flexes are the same. Some are on the stiffer end. Some are much more on the
we did a video the other week about it.
And some products can be vanity flexed, right? You look at an X flex and you can pair it next to another product and they can be, 10 cycles different, which for us is like a whole flex.
And I think that's where probably most, consumers, if they're not educated or, keyed up on that sort of thing, the first thing that will go into the shop, well, I want the Callaway driver, give me a stiff.
Yeah. So when you did your flex video, what was your key takeaway from that? Was it just that
they're all different. Yeah. For us, it's like I likened it to buying a pair of shoes. We all wear different shoes. We might have your Hoka's might be your favorite, your Mizuno, your Nike, whatever it may be. 10 is meant to be a 10.
Yeah.
But no one's the same.
Yeah.
And everything's going to feel, one will feel narrower, one will feel wider, one will feel tight on you, one will feel larger. And that was the same with the shafts. It was, okay, well, they all say 60X on them.
Yeah.
So they're all the same, aren't they?
Where do I go from here?
Yeah, because I when we were doing the video, it was literally from a chap I was teaching about 2 days before, and he's a guy who doesn't go and get fit, even though he's got time, he's got money, but he just wants things now. Well, just get me.
Yeah.
What flex is best for me?
Right.
And it was, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. We need to go and hit some golf balls and find this out, because there's thousands upon of options out there. You know, like we say, there's 6 in the in the Ventus lineup. We can't just give you a stiff.
Yeah.
Because of what you just mentioned there with how you're loading the shaft and stuff. Well, no, just get me a stiff in something.
Yeah, we'll even see the oddballs in a fitting too, where you see a player that might gravitate towards a very stiff bend profile and a softer flex. So that, you could Ventus, we make Ventus black and an S flex. It's not like all the Ventus black products that we offer are X and TX, right? So, there's a little, and then, in the red, we go all the way up to a 90 gram X for fairway woods and things like that for players with speed that are trying to create launch and spin. So, and then if you're talking about Ventus throughout the bag, one question we get is if I play XYZ color in my driver, I should just buy that for everything, right?
Oh yeah, defo.
Right? So, and we see the combination of a Ventus black in a driver and a Ventus TR blue in a 3-wood. I want sort of something similar but a little softer and create more launch and spin, or even a Ventus black in a driver and a Ventus red in a 5-wood. Right? So it's really, and that's where the player interview and the fit takes precedent, is we're trying to figure out if it's a fairway wood, what gap are you trying to cover? What are you using it for? Now, driver is a little more streamlined in that we're like, okay, it's teed up.
Yeah, bang it.
You're going to have the same lie every time. Your mission is the same every time, to hit it as far as I can and as straight as I can, or whatever that might be. But yeah, we mix and match all the time. That's not rare.
Interesting. And then would it be looking at maximizing numbers with a driver, or trying to hit certain numbers with spin, speed?
Yeah, and that's when we're talking about a 3-wood. One of the key questions we ask for a fairway wood is it a T club, is it an off the deck club, or is it a both club?
Yeah.
Because if it's a both club, we got to do some kind of analysis of, is it okay if it spins a bit off the tee? Because primarily I need some spin out of the fairway. Can I give that up on a tee shot to cost myself a handful of yards, and I mean less than 10, not a lot, to have a little spinnier? Or if this is just, I play this on a short par 4 and I just need it to go very straight, well, we can take some spin off of that because we're not trying to land it on a green. So it just varies on what you're trying to use.
Yeah, that's good advice, that actually figuring out what the club's for, and then feels probably the next big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and then it's no different when we go even further into hybrids, because we make Ventus blue and black hybrid shafts. It's, well, when should I switch out of an iron into a hybrid? Well, that's really more a question of specific launch and spin distance targets, because now I am trying to hold a green, and that's not a tremendous amount of amateur players create enough spin or speed, mostly speed, with a 4-iron to create the launch and spin needed to hold a green. And that's where a hybrid is a very suitable option. So it's just, it all comes back to a player interview, what you're trying to achieve. And honestly, Matt, we're a component of the golf club, right? So our piece does not work without a head and a grip on it. So there has to be a good combination of the two. Right? So we would say in fitting that a club head can do a lot of the adjustment and heavy lifting, right? So you could get more spin reduction out of taking loft off a driver head than you could switching profiles of a golf shaft. So what our part is there to do is to maximize the performance of the head, and then also create that synergy between the player and the head for tempo, feel, weight, flex, to time the golf swing. So what you're left with is a combination of things where a lot of heavy lifting with the club head, fine tuning with the shaft, contingent on the player and speed. Yeah. And then we can even go more finely tuned than that, and you start talking about things like tipping a shaft or length reduction, here and there. So it's a combination. We're just a piece of the puzzle.
It just sort of goes to show how important fitting is, really, doesn't it? With that in mind, you've got your head, right, okay, well, there's only so much we can do with that. Then we're going to marry up and maybe see some more gains or tweaks from the shaft, and then put them two together, and you've got your final product, is where you walk in and go, give me stiff in that one. There's a lot left unchecked.
Yes,
and a lot left on the table, that for the sake of 30 minutes to an hour to get dialed in, you sort of know you're right then, and you're good to go.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we will never not encourage players to go that route.
Yeah, it just baffles me that that it doesn't happen. And even if it's not brand new clubs, especially with adapters nowadays, you can throw a brand new shaft into an old head.
Try something new.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, before we move into our favourite part of the show, overrated, underrated.
Oh yeah.
What, in the terms of graphite, have we got? I know we've got the Pro shaft coming out now.
Yeah, that's our next venture. Yeah.
Is there anything, what do you think the next technological advancement is going to be in graphite? Is there something that opens it up again? Do we come, 2 years down the line? Obviously, we've seen Velo Core, we see Velo Core Plus, we see TR. Is there something that you go, and obviously you might not be able to share what anything you're working on in your back cave?
A beautifully vague answer. What I would tell you is when we talk about technology in a golf shaft, we're really talking about two things. We're talking about materials and material application.
Yeah.
So what are we using and how do we use it? And how does that drive player performance? So one of the conversations we have all the time within the walls at Fujikura is we could build a very exotic golf shaft. We could put the craziest materials we could find in it.
Cost them.
The question is, what is the player benefit?
Yeah.
Right? So that's that's why we talk about testing and player testing and all these things is, yes, we could do it just to do it. But our goal is how can we do it to make the product better?
Yeah.
And that's where you come up with the technology like a VeloCore or a VeloCore Plus. So what we found with that technology was if we use a high tonnage pitch material, we create a lot of consistency and stability. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we marry that with some other materials, some 40-ton materials, and instead of just putting those materials in a specific section like just the tip or just the handle or just the mid, what if we run that full length? What does that do? And that's kind of how VeloCore was born. If we move into VeloCore Plus, you're talking about how do we take this tech and fine-tune it and make it a little bit better? Well, if we increase tonnage here or there, can we add a third material to create more balance and more feel and more speed? And so what I tell you is the future is the integration of whatever these materials are in a way that drives player benefit and player performance. Now, I will say anytime we have a key technology, VeloCore, VeloCore Plus, whatever that is, it is always in the conversation set of what products we can expand that to. So just like VeloCore moving its way into Axiom irons, can we move that into wedges? Can we move that into lighter weight Ventus shafts in the 40-gram category? Can we move that into new product lines? And the answer is, yeah, we can. We can do those things, and we work on those things all the time. So the future for us is, what is the next material application that we can find that truly improves player performance?
Wow. I think there's probably, there's a lot more opportunity, isn't there, with graphite?
We have some crazy stuff in research and development that you will never see, but just we're trying.
Was that square shaft you were?
We're not doing that. We're not doing that. You know what? That's a funny one because when we talked about things like VeloCore, VeloCore Plus, when we say, hey, it's a faster shaft, it's like, well, how is it faster? It's not like aerodynamically different. It's still just a tube. What we see is a faster golf shaft. Ball speed increases is a byproduct of accuracy and consistency. Yeah,
so
if we can create more on-centered contact, we're going to see ball speeds go up.
Yeah,
and to their credit, OEMs have done a phenomenal job of making driver heads that are very forgiving off the center. We still know we get peak performance on center.
Yeah,
and that's where the closer we can steer the golf ball to that spot, the higher that we'll see ball speeds, and you end up with a more consistent flight, more consistent speed, increased speed, and better overall consistency.
Brilliant.
It's great.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff, isn't it? Like I say earlier on in the conversation when we were in the studio in Carlsbad, like the Enzo system, how you tweak things like that, and then obviously all the technologies that you have as well are incredible, and it is. Yeah. I think it is quite exciting to see how far it's come and how far it can go.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversations we have where we are so happy with where we're at, and we feel like we are just scratching the surface of where we can really go. So it's cool.
Brilliant. Right, we're going to get into some overrated, underrateds before we just take a few questions that we've had sent in as well. So thank you for that. And I think the main takeaway from all that is graphite is for everyone.
Yes.
Go and get fit for it.
Yes.
And see what works for you.
That was a beautiful condensement of a
podcast. Yeah, there we go.
There.
Right, so overrated, underrated, Spencer. We have some categories in which we take something that is a common theme amongst the golfing community.
Okay.
Or just in general conversation, and we figure out whether it's overrated and underrated. Now, we went out for dinner last night, a few of us, and because you
Yes.
are American,
Yes.
and you're over here in the greatest country in the world, England, one thing that you had to try and you've been yearning for
Yes.
was fish and chips.
I did. I had it last night.
So,
It's a must every time I come over.
overrated or underrated, would you say?
But I'm gonna say underrated because I love it. I love it. There's plenty of people back, and there's plenty of places back home, by the way, that serve.
Do you
fish
have
and
it in
chips.
America?
Yeah, quite a bit.
Really?
They don't serve.
They have fish?
Yeah, believe it or not, they have fish, and we leave out the peas. I got to be honest with you.
So you've
I'm
not got fish and chips
I'm-
in America then?
I'm okay with the whole peas. The bushy peas is a hard stop. I can't do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's my overrated.
Right.
But at least I don't do anything crazy. I'm not like slathering it in like barbecue sauce. Or
Yeah,
anything.
that would be
I'm
a
at least
straight no,
yeah,
please.
At least, I'm eating it correctly.
Please go on the plane. You've insulted our heritage. Do you have any yourself? Have you brought any to the table for us?
Of the over/under rating?
Yeah.
We touched on this before we started filming, and that's par threes. I'm curious about that question. Like
Par three, the hole or a course?
yeah, like a short course, basically, is what we call them back home, where you have. It's not a full par three course, but there's probably like 3 to 4 par fours, and everything else is a par three.
Yeah.
Overrated or underrated? What would you say?
I would say everyone looks at them as overrated
Okay.
from the outside in.
Yeah.
But actually, when you go play, we played one this morning, Sunningdale Heath. They are so underrated.
I would agree with underrated.
If you're a beginner, great place to learn
Mhm.
because you've not got the daunting 6,000, 7,000 yard
Right.
course. If you're a good golfer, it gives you a chance to sharpen your skills. You should theoretically, if the short holes, be going under par or shooting better scores. A lot of the time you won't because they're tricky. If you're looking for a quick game of golf,
Yeah.
the one we played this morning, I could quite comfortably join there as a member and spend the rest of my days playing there.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Different loops.
I totally agree on underrated. It's fun. It's kind of the one area where we don't really worry too much about giving each other strokes because everybody's playing a 145-yard par three, so you kind of do what you do. And a lot of the better players, the advantage off the tee is gone, so it levels out the playing field. But I really enjoy like an executive style golf course. I think it's a lot of fun, and it's just like you said, you can be very, very early or very seasoned in the game, and everybody really kind of gets a similar experience.
Yeah, I think they are sort of an American thing, aren't they?
Yeah.
We played Goat Hill when we were over with you in California.
Yep.
There was another one that we were due to go to, couldn't quite make it, but it feels like, when you hear places like Bandon Dunes and other big resorts, there always seems to be, we've got the mini nine or the little
course.
bad nine
Yeah,
at Scottsdale, wherever it is, and it seems like it is a bit of an American thing. Obviously, we're not blessed with as much land as you are over there, but
The true
there
American
should be
thing,
so
though,
many.
is you got to do it, with a speaker and a cocktail, which is that's very American version. I see the grimacing on your face.
Overrated or underrated then playing golf with music?
Oh, underrated. It's the best.
I know, it's highly overrated.
I'm putting barbecue sauce on everything for the rest of this trip.
Golf speaker on the golf course. No. What would old Tom Morris think? Just think about that.
I think he'd be proud of how far we've come.
Final one then before we get into a few questions.
Okay.
Mini drivers.
Oh, yeah. That's
Overrated, underrated.
Well, can I be neutral? I got to pick one, right?
Yeah, you got to pick
I don't
one.
think they're overrated because I just don't. They seem to be kind of a niche thing that I don't really hear too many people talk about, and the handful of people I do hear talk about it rave about it. I do think it's an interesting concept, though. You've got a golf club that's 13 degrees aloft and built to just be a bomber off the tee at 44 inches or shorter, and I don't know. It's kind of a cool
Just get a
concept.
13-inch driver.
Yeah,
A 13-degree driver.
why not? They make them.
Same head,
Yeah.
but a bigger head.
So
Same loft.
I'm picking up on overrated.
I think so for
Yeah.
me, a little bit. Yeah.
fair.
Okay.
That's
We've solved all the problems of the
Yeah,
the
what
golfing
other
world there.
problems can we solve today?
Okay, I'm going to hit you with a few questions to finish some shaft-related stuff here. Is there going to be a new Axiom in 2025?
Like a brand new one.
brand new.
I would say
Brand new.
keep your eyes peeled for expansion.
Oh,
Is what I would say.
oh,
Yeah.
different colours.
No,
Oh,
you're warm.
we're warm.
You're warm. But a full overhaul, that one's just getting started. We got cool things in the works, but.
There's a question here. I'll rephrase it a little. The question is, why is golf equipment so expensive? And I would maybe put this in terms of graphite.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably one barrier to entry. Maybe do you think we'll see price come down in the future of, like, say, a set of axioms?
I think it's more about the way you tier product, right? So not every driver shaft that we make is $350, and not every iron shaft is $125. We make product that is much less expensive. What price point does for us is really it frees up the design to use more exotic materials or more higher tonnage materials. And what we found with things like VeloCore and research is we can influence performance relatively drastically by certain material applications in certain ways. And the truth is, they cost more. It costs us more to produce. It's just it's the way that it is. So we tier our product at Fujikura sort of good, better, best. If Ventus is the top end, you could go to our Vista Pro, which is more an entry level product, and it's still a phenomenal product. Mm-hmm. And the dirty little secret is when we do something like a Ventus and we learn how to build a really good golf shaft, it's pretty much impossible for us to not trickle that down into everything that we do. Now, if you look at the new Pro shafts, right?
Yeah.
It may not have VeloCore technology in it, but it has
got a lot of other stuff.
It's got pan 40-ton material, which was an original VeloCore. It's got accelerated taper, which was used in original Ventus. So when we learn how to build a better mousetrap, a lot of those things, and all the way down into Vista Pro, there's little elements of Ventus just in design characteristics that are in there. So the better our premium product, the better everything. So it's a full
everyone elevates from it. Yeah, interesting about that.
My point to that is if you buy something that's on the less expensive end,
you're still getting a good product.
It's still a high-performance product.
Yeah.
It's just a different category.
Like that. We did cover this in the chat a moment ago, but is shaft profile, e.g. red, blue, black, determined by swing tempo or launch conditions, or both?
Both, yeah. So tempo, definitely, and then what you're trying to achieve with launch and spin marries into that as well.
Right. Yeah, that's perfect. Hit the nail on the head there. And one more for us to end it here. Is regular/stiff really that different? I had a fitting for driver, regular, and I've got stiff irons.
I think that's more about club delivery. I would assume that you're probably swinging a little more maybe aggressively with the irons, or you're trying to reduce some launch and spin. And then with the driver, you might be able to create a little bit more speed with an R-Flex because the ball's teed up. So there's probably more of a swing characteristic thing. They are different. But they don't always have to go together. I've seen the inverse of that as well, where someone would play an X flex in the driver and a stiff flex down from there. With the idea being, like we talked about, the driver I'm swinging at 100%, and I would like something a little softer in the bag to work the ball or shape the ball a little bit differently. Yeah. So it's if that's a proper fit, it's a combination of two things. It's the swing of the player and the delivery of the golf club, or just the profile of the driver shaft that you're playing. That R may be, like we talked about, inherently on the stiffer side of things and play more like an S in something else. So it'd be interesting. It's a bit like the I think it's like the stamping on the bottom of clubs, isn't it? Oh, the lofts,
Yeah, the lofts of clubs. Like, do you see how far Bryson hits his 5-iron? And you go, yeah, that 5-iron's 16 degrees though, so it's technically a 2-iron. Yeah. So it doesn't mean anything. Like, it should be loft.
I think one thing that I will give credit to for all iron manufacturers, all OEMs, is that there was a chasing of speed for a while, right? And it led to stronger lofted irons. And what they have done is they've refined that, and they've made the lower lofts okay and coincide better with higher launching and higher spin characteristics. So it's not all about speed and distance where the ball flies 130 yards and rolls out to 165. It's more the ball flies 150 and rolls out to 160, right? So they've curtailed that, which I think is great because the average player can use more speed. But I would say almost every player needs more launch and spin.
Yes.
Almost every player.
Yeah, I agree with that.
There's definitely some that don't, but that's a byproduct of speed as well. So.
Yeah. Well, absolutely fantastic there. Thank you for coming on and giving us a little education on graphite. That was very helpful, and hopefully the listeners and viewers can take a few tidbits away there. For me, you've got to go and get fit. We all, every video we do about this, we always bang on about that, and then that it is for everybody, you know, and even if it is price dependent, some of the lower stuff's got the good stuff in it as well. So go check it out. Thank you for coming on, sir.
Thanks, Matty. Appreciate it.
Guys, if you haven't already, do make sure you are following us on all the social channels, Instagram, Facebook. Go and check out Fujikora's as well. We've got that video coming out with the tour of the studio and the factory, which was quite interesting as well. So head over to that. If you've got any overrated, underrated, or any questions that you want to pose, info@mattfryergolf.co.uk, and we'll answer those in a new pod coming soon. Thanks for watching, listening. Leave us a review, and we'll see you very soon.